Today, I was watching an episode of a TV series in which I did background acting on. And for this particular show, it's called Cape Fear. It's on Apple TV. It's a remake of, I believe, the original Martin Scorsese movie. And it stars Javier Bardem as, I believe, Max Cady is the character name. Amy Adams is in it. A couple of other great actors are in it. Um, and I did background on that. It was featured background, and it paid a little bit higher than the other roles because it was implied that the role was going to get um, on screen time or whatever. I remember in the specific breakdown on the acting website, it said acting experience required or something like that, which I kind of hate when shows do. I guess they're just really not looking for people who are green, who are just going to look into the camera lens exactly. But really, it doesn't matter if you're a green actor or if you're somebody who has 13 years of experience doing background. Background is background. Um, and, I feel like I'm in the part of my career where I don't necessarily need to be doing this anymore. But given the current state of the industry, the way things were right after the strikes, the industry is very slow to pick back up. In all honesty, I don't blame myself for picking up that gig. I wanted to just be on set and do the thing that I love. Even if a lot of it is sitting and waiting, I'm willing to do that because number one, it pays. So I'm not wasting my time. Number two, it's experience getting to be on a set. This is a show that already cast, and so they're not casting any more roles. It's a one season limited series kind of thing, so I'm not really jeopardizing any future opportunities. And it was a cool experience. I got to work on that set, and I remember getting to meet Javier Bardem and talk to him about a couple of things very briefly because when you're on these sets, you don't want to talk to these actors. It's taboo, and it's taboo for a lot of times for a reason, because people will fan out. And it's like, these guys are here to work. If you're on the set, you're a professional as well. That's what's expected. And so but obviously I was a fan of this guy. I was a fan of his work, but I let him work. It's just when somebody's kind of like 3 feet away from you, it's very hard to ignore them and to just like act like you don't see them at all. And there'd be times where he's just looking for people to talk to. He'd be looking around, he'll say something, head nod towards you, and I'll just be like, "What's up?" And then I'll say something just random, like, "Hey man," like, because he was looking on the wall where we were standing at. We're literally in front of like actual restaurants that I think they closed down for the day. They probably paid their tab for the day because restaurants are losing a day's worth of business. I've worked on a Tyler Perry project before, and he did that. He paid like in total, like I think something like 40 grand or something because we were working on like Macon County, Georgia, and like there's all these like mom and pop restaurants. So he like paid their tab for the day. We were going in as crew and background, just getting what we wanted because he got the tab, so that was cool. This was different, obviously. It wasn't like that, but because these were expensive ass restaurants. But I'm sure they got them covered. But regardless, the point of what I'm trying to say is, before that huge ass tangent, was he was looking at this thing, just like because their menu, they had food that looked great, and I just made a slight comment of like, shit looks good, doesn't it? Like something to that effect. He's like, yeah, man, like I'm so hungry just looking at this. And we just talked for like a second. Javier's an actor that's been very outspoken about Palestine. I brought that up, to which he was very surprised, and like talked to me for like literally 5, almost 10 minutes, because of that alone, which was pretty cool. Um, and he actually said that he's gonna personally like not work on. I remember he said he's not working on productions where like they're complicit in these things in the Israeli genocide. So I was, the Palestinian genocide, Israel committing genocide against Palestinians. So that's something we had in common, and I respected him a lot for. And then being on that set, I got to talk to the director of that episode, and I kind of made a couple of comments about the way he was shooting things because this particular director is a very visual director, and the way in which he was showcasing the way he wanted to shoot a scene to his DP, which is something that I'm paying attention to as a filmmaker myself, trying to work and bring my projects to life. I wrote some scripts, like I would see he kind of had like would use his iPhone to just like mimic certain shots and like show it to like his camera person, and they would just do shots that way. And I remember pointing that out to him. I said, "That's a very interesting way of like planning out these shots and like showing them, and then you would see how he would do it, and I was right near like the monitors and stuff, so I would like look, he see that, and I'm like, holy shit, that was pretty good. And I remember at one point he looked at me, said he literally said, "Are you a director, dude?" And like to me that was like the biggest compliment ever. I was like, oh, I'm just working on something little, and he was like, no, 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 like, great question. He like talked to me for a second, but like all the snobbiness of like certain people have when it comes to like being on sets, all of that was gone. Like it was just like everybody had respect for one another. It didn't matter if you were background or if you were cast. Like everybody would take the time of their day to talk to you, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you work for Apple or if you work from home. All these people are working together to just make a project. And I think this was one of the first projects that I was shooting in Atlanta after like all the strikes and stuff. Like everybody was just happy to have work. There's a lot of people out there, crew people, that just weren't able to get work. So like I remember somebody on the crew telling me that, like, I have tons of friends who are out of work. Like, you know, this is even though it's just this job, like in a lot of ways I'm very lucky. And I felt the same way too about being background. All of that to say, I learned something about background just kind of like in watching this episode back, just to like see myself. It brought me back to like 2021 when I worked on Cobra Kai, and I was so happy. Like even Stranger Things, was like, man, I was in that. Can't wait to see if they got me. And I had one experience on a show that was on Showtime, got canceled. The First Lady, where I actually had a scene, a very small scene, and like I was the main focus of it. And the showrunner actually came up to me. I was like, "You're gonna have a scene, man. Like, we're gonna reach out to you." Like to the point where like right close to shooting, I genuinely don't know how they found out, but like I had I think they reached out to me through email, and I was booked to work on Atlanta, the FX series. They had this one episode, this one scene that they were shooting for some reason, I think during season 3, and it was supposed to be like a movie theater scene, but they kept pushing it off. I was supposed to be in it. It was supposed to be a small scene with like 4 people or whatever. It was like Donald Glover and I think the Van character, you know, his girlfriend, his wife in the show, or something like that. And like they kept pushing off filming for it, and then they would tell us, oh, that scene's scrapped, but then they would bring it back, and they would ask us if our availability was open, and it got to the point where eventually that date came around where the showrunner was like, we need you to work on First Lady, and they like conflicted, and they called the Atlanta people to free me up to do that. So that was pretty cool. But at the end of the day, even with that, if you're thinking of background as something that'll like take you to the next step in your career as an actor, it won't. And there's nothing wrong with doing it. There's nothing wrong with just that idea alone that it won't do that. We should all know that. But I just remember like the idea and the label of being featured background, being so excited to do that on this Cape Fear show. And then I watched the episode, and I have like literally the smallest amount of camera time imaginable. I'm the most forgettable, like, you know, obviously a background. You're just there to set the world, set the scene, make it believable that it's happening in real life. And to, you know, honestly set the environment for the actors too, who are trying to live in the moment in these scenes. And as somebody who's trying to make it big, you know, in this industry and have an impact someday, it's just like sometimes things like this come out, and like I remember posting the screenshots of me in this episode because I was so excited to have worked with this A-list actor, to have been able to talk to him and all that. And the truth is, it just kind of felt like seeing me so small in the background in that episode just kind of put things in perspective, where I was like, maybe it wasn't that big a deal. It was more a cool experience for me. And at the end of the day, I thought, you know, in posting it on social media, even this maybe, that like I'm kind of seeking validation that's unhealthy from strangers online, you know? I loved working on that show, but I'm also at a point in my career where I feel like I'm stuck because of the way the industry is, the way that I can't get my projects off of the ground. So all that put together, and then just this coming out after waiting for it to come out for almost maybe a half year to a year, maybe. I don't know how long ago I shot it. I barely remember. But yeah, it was a little discouraging. But shit, I'm honored to have been able to be a part of that, and I hope that someday I get to work with these same people who I saw on these sets as a background artist, but as a scene partner in the future. And don't let that discourage you. The fact that sometimes, even like at most when you do background on these shows, you might get a little bit of screen time. But at the end of the day, don't keep chasing that high. Don't keep doing it hoping that it's going to take you the next step in your career. Work on training and being the best actor you could be. And I know that talent isn't the factor that's going to make you famous, because I know people who are very talented who have had to pivot to different careers because just things aren't working out and the industry isn't looking for them. You have to kind of make your own wave. And in order to do that, you have to be very patient. And times like this in the industry where it's very slow, kind of like a desert, or like an ocean has its ebbs and its flows or whatever, it tests a person's true character and passion for their craft. And honestly, only the strong people make it out of that. So I'm hoping I'm one of them. And this experience working on Cape Fear was amazing. But yeah,